So today we're going to talk about the key statistics you should be measuring in order to scale your outbound lead generation. Now, the reason I love outbound lead generation so much is I actually think it's more scalable than inbound lead generation. The reason being is that if you're using Facebook or Instagram, that sort of thing, to advertise your business, then you're at the mercy of their algorithm. And yes, you can choose who your target audience is, but you can't choose how that's served up. And also, you obviously have to continue to update the creative on an ongoing basis in order to continue to get the same results. So there's a lot of work there. And yes, of course, there's work in outbound lead generation, but as soon as you get the target audience right, the messaging right, it's just a matter of bringing on more callers to deliver that message for you. So therefore, we should be able to scale outbound lead generation more effectively than inbound. And that's why it's such an effective channel and why so many of the bigger companies are still investing in outbound lead generation. Now, the one caveat with outbound lead generation is it does take time. So I like to give an outbound campaign at least 12 months to dial it in to get it right. Obviously, that's not always feasible for most businesses. They want to see results within 3 to 6 months. Within the 3 to 6 month mark, you should be able to turn around and look at those conversations your salesperson is having and realize that they're having the conversations with the right people. If they're not having conversations with the right people, then your audience is off and therefore you need to tweak that. However, if they're having conversations with the right people, then it's a matter of then dialing in your sales process to then scale it up. Because ultimately, outbound sales is harder than inbound sales because you're physically having to reach out to someone, get them interested when they're not searching for something, and then work out what that sales process looks like. So in terms of baseline stats, so let's talk baseline stats now and what those stats you should be measuring in order to scale this up. So firstly, we look at the number of dials you do per day. Typically, an outbound caller should be aiming to get to 200 to 400 outbound dials a day. Why the big range? The big range there is purely based on how many conversations they're having. And do they need to get through gatekeepers in order to get to those decision makers? If you've got direct numbers of your decision makers and you're calling directly to them, then ultimately you should be able to do more dials there. And in fact, you'll have a higher conversation rate as well. And that's the key thing, is if someone is doing 400 dials and only having 20 conversations, in other words, a chat rate of 5%, then they're still less effective than someone that's doing 200 dials and having 40 conversations with a chat rate of 40%. Because ultimately, the key stat there that we want to look at is how many conversations per day are they having with decision makers? That can range usually between 7% up to around about 25%. So obviously, the more the better. Once you know that within your market, because it does differ across different markets, once you know that, then you can work out what should my output be, my caller's output be in terms of number of dials. And then ultimately, you can be targeting a number of dials and a number of conversations per day. Typically, you want to see that number of conversations per day, somewhere between 30 to 60. From there, we want to then look at booking rate. Now, booking rates, we find that these differ somewhere between 2% to 10%. Again, depends on the offer, depends on the market, depends what the ultimate outcome that you're trying to achieve. But somewhere between 2 to 10% is good. So in other words, for a caller, they want to be targeting at least one booking a day, if not 2 or 3. Again, so if you can test that and measure that, then you can make sure that you're hitting those stats over time. And that's what becomes scalable. From a marketing point of view, you should be able to go, okay, in 3 months' time, looking back, we've gone, okay, typically we're having 40 conversations a day and we're booking at 5%. Therefore, we're getting two bookings a day, which is a pretty good result. And from a sales, so the next stat that we want to track is, of course, our sales stats. So this is pretty easy. We want to look at number of bookings that we've got booked in our calendar, how many of those have actually shown up, and then what's our conversion rate. So if we know that we're getting a show up rate of 50%. What can we do to increase that? If we can increase that, then by up to say 70%, you're going to be having quite a lot more conversations per day. So instead of having, if you've got 10 booked in for the week, rather than having 5, you're now having 7. That's a huge increase, and you're more likely to then convert more as well. Then we look at conversion rate. So with outbound leads, someone that's not used to closing sales, particularly outbound, you want to see them starting at 10 to 15% on a over a 3-month period or so because of the sales cycle length. But ultimately you want to see that getting up to 25 to 50% even, again, taking into account that sales cycle length. So they're the key things you need to monitor. And this is really the key. This is what we do on a daily basis. We're always tracking stats. I actually get my callers to track stats in 3 different locations so that ultimately we can see it, my client can see it, they can see it, we can see how they're performing over time across different campaigns. It's just a way that enables you to get good visual across what a campaign is doing. And then ultimately, once you know that, then you should be able to take 10 good callers, put them in a campaign, and 10x the results. That's ultimately where you can get to with outbound lead generation, and that's why I love it so much.